Good morning, All Saints. Over the next few weeks, we're going to use this slot in our newsletter to talk about organizations and ministries with which our members are involved in that we, as a church, support. Last week, we talked to Sam Turner at West Dallas Community School. This week, we are talking to two friends of mine and friends of All Saints, Andrew Cagle and Eric Nystrom. Thank y'all so much for being here, Eric and Andrew.
Oh,
Happy to
this is
be
great.
here.
I'm going to go in order of attendance to All Saints. Andrew, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you and Chandler found All Saints?
Sure. Chandler and I first came to All Saints. So I think I found All Saints through randomly being introduced to Ryan Flanagan. Actually, we were pretty new to Dallas. We didn't really have a church that we had landed at yet. But I met Ryan. I didn't know anything about Anglicanism. And we had been at a Presbyterian church in New York before. And we just knew we were looking for something that was liturgical and sacramental, which was a little bit new to us, but that was kind of where we were on the journey. Anyway, so I met Ryan Flanagan, and I said, I trust this person, and I feel like whatever church he's part of, I feel like I can trust, as a place for our spiritual growth. So that's kind of how we came, and been here ever since.
Flanagan should have received a raise when y'all came. I hope he did. And we love him where he's serving now. And Eric, how did you and Sarah find All Saints?
Sure. I moved back to Dallas from the Brazos Valley, from a certain agricultural and mechanical school where I got my degree, and then married Sarah here in Dallas, and we looked for a church together. We were at another place for a while, but we started to long for that, maybe similar to what Andrew was saying, a liturgical, strongly convicted church, and had a few people refer us to All Saints, including Ryan Flanagan. So he definitely gets a raise. We immediately loved All Saints. We kind of got separated for a minute due to COVID, but we've been back now for probably 6 months. Technically, we were in the hospital with our son for a while, but All Saints was very good to us through that, and we're just really thrilled to be back and plugged in.
Well, I'm so thankful that both of y'all and the families y'all represent are at All Saints. But I want to talk to y'all about Elmwood Farms. Andrew, will you tell us a little bit about what Elmwood Farms is and maybe just something of the history of it?
Sure. We normally we shorten our name, but our full name, our full legal name, is Elmwood Neighborhood Farm, and which I feel like helps kind of give an idea of what it is. It's an urban farm, but we wanted to put neighborhood in the name because we wanted to really have it be a local place, a community hub. So we do a lot of different things, and maybe it's easier just to start off by saying a few of the things that we do and then how we got here. So right now we garden. We have about a quarter-acre garden that's either being cultivated or prepared for cultivation. We have a community compost program. We have a culinary program and dinners. We have live music, community events, and also just kind of are open to, there's people here and there in the neighborhood that know it's a space that they can use it for neighborhood association meetings or taking kids on Fridays that are like in a neighborhood daycare, little things like that. So all of those are a bunch of things that kind of work together as an urban farm, or really a neighborhood farm. And right now we're on a 1-acre lot next to Tyler Station in the Elmwood neighborhood of Oak Cliff. But we started, 3 years ago, during that first kind of spring, summer of COVID, and a tiny little chain link fenced off piece of grass behind some chain link fencing behind a convenience store. And we were there for about a year and a half and went really hard, did a lot of gardening, invited people out, got people used to being in the space. And then eventually we kind of had to move. Our landlord decided that he could get money out of other people that were more lucrative than a community garden, basically. And several months later, actually ended up approaching our current landlord, who had this 1 acre lot for sale. It's a really beautiful property, kind of lined by trees. Anyone from All Saints that's been out there kind of knows what we're talking about. And just said, hey, here's what we want to do and continue doing. And he said, you know what, I got an offer on this property today, but I'm going to turn it down, and let's try to make this happen. So we signed a lease agreement last spring. And since last spring, we've been at 1014 Nolte Drive.
Wow. And Eric, what Andrew said that it was in the community and for the community, what kind of problems exist in that community that Elmwood Farms seeks to resolve?
Yeah, I think we've sensed and we've heard from folks who have come out and experienced the space and been to events and helped out, a longing for connection. Like Andrew said, we started Elmwood Farms out of a desire to connect, because we were all disembodied as a community, and talking on screens if we were able to do that with our jobs. And yeah, we've really sensed that the need for that and connection. And we're not just minds and hearts, we're bodies, and we're a social creature. And a lot of us became bread bakers and home brewers and coffee aficionados and fermenters during COVID. And there was something of wonder and joy in that, making things and experiencing that. But the missing piece was togetherness and celebrating. And we praise things, and the joy is only full when we praise things together. And we see that. And so we're definitely hoping to and seeing that we're filling a need for community and togetherness. I could almost say that Elmwood Farms is farming on the side as we're seeking to bring people together, but farming is critical to our existence. But and we have Oak Cliff is very it's patchwork. There are some historically more disadvantaged areas. There are areas that are up and coming. There are areas that are well established. So it's impossible to generalize down where we are in the South Parish. And but what we have also seen is that we can be a source for affordable, healthy food that we're an urban farm. We don't have the luxury of the economy of scale. We can't compete with Tom Thumb. But what we can do is through the collective volunteering and labor is provide really high quality food to people who really need it in our neighborhood, who we can then build bridges of knowing and cultivate those relationships too. So they kind of work in tandem.
Yeah. Andrew, why should a Christian, because you have people involved at Elmwood Farms who aren't Christian, and I know that's wonderful, but I bet there are folks who are Christians who aren't sure why being involved in an organization or an activity like community gardening, why that's worthwhile when they could be going to prayer trainings, they could be doing any number of good Christian things. Why are you, as a Christian, why do you invest in Elmwood Farms?
Well, God has given us something to do. I think when we think about what it means to be human, we only understand what it means to be human in the context of the story that we're given through Scripture, and especially if we go back to Genesis. And the way that I think try to communicate maybe why farming, and really it's like farming and agriculture is it's one way that we're participating in creation, but it's like those, our first relationships are with God, with other creatures, and with people. And when we think about like why God created man, the earth was void empty and it was formless. And so for us, it's really just connects to the basics of what it means to, I think, be human and then know God. And if I think farming is a way of ordering the world, this initial charge given to Adam. And I think in a modern society, especially a digital modern society, there's so many things that can pull us away from really the opportunity to know God through the natural world. But also the idea that the natural world, there's something about participating and stewarding and ordering the natural world, creating harmony, also doing that with others. But also we don't really, I think everything's also connected. I think for those of us at the farm, it's hard for us to think about what it means to treat the earth with care or treat an animal with care as it does to treat a person with care. Because ultimately it's all coming from the same place of how we're formed to understand our relationship with God and really how God's relating with each of us. So I think at our there's something I think of a lot. I think I mentioned it at our one of our events last weekend is if we speak about God being ever present and filling all things, then part of participating in something like being outdoors and gardening is taking us face to face with seeing the reality of the fact that the creation is bursting forth with beauty because it's all revealing Christ. So I think that's why it's important that Christians participate in this sort of thing. And it could be just gardening at home. But it may seem disconnected, but it will over time through the doing, I think, reveal. So, and also it's a great way to pray. So, you know, I always tell people, you know, come out, like weed for an hour and just say the Jesus prayer, you know, you know, cut off your phone, disconnect from your computer, even maybe disconnect from all your intrusive thoughts, and engage your body and do something meditative. And allow Christ to just kind of come in and see what grace does through the repetition of these rhythms. So
I don't remember who said this, but I heard this one time that somebody was picking the legs off of a daddy long legs, and their dad told them to stop when they were a kid, and the kid said, "Daddy long legs don't feel pain. You don't have to worry about what will happen to the daddy long legs." And the dad said, "I'm not worried about what will become of the spider with you doing that. I'm worried about what will become of you with you doing that." And there is something, you know, the church sometimes talks about the general equity of Old Testament civil law of Israel, which is to say the particular civil law of Israel shouldn't be applied in a modern way, but that we learn something of the general nature of God and the world through it. And when you look at the laws of Israel, God is very concerned about how we treat land and animals, and the way in which we treat them both does something in the world and does something to us. So hopefully if you're watching this, you would want to be involved, like Andrew said, in your own garden, or maybe specifically Elmwood Farms. So Eric, what would be a good kind of next step if someone wanted to get involved at Elmwood Farms and help?
Sure. So we have a number of opportunities. We've started up something called Second Saturdays. We love alliteration. It's usually from about 9 to noon, maybe more toward like 8 to 11 in the hot summer, if we decide to go out there at all during the 100 degrees. So we did that to create a rhythm so that you would know every second Saturday we're going to be out there. If you miss it, don't worry, you can go to the next one. You know, you can go to our website, sign up to be on our email list, which we'll distribute event information and volunteer information through that. We also have different teams of volunteers you can kind of join to kind of take ownership and not just you know, do something here and there, but you can be part of the culinary team. I'm actually the culinary director, and our focus is obviously to eventually take the produce that we grow and create beautiful food, because there's something that there's something deeply fundamentally human that connects us to our fathers, and toiling together and then breaking bread together and sitting down. And so, I could go on about the culinary team. That's why I gave myself the title of culinary director. We have the agricultural team, we have the composting team, we have the chicken team, we have things like marketing, social media, grant writing. Like, we have what we want to cultivate at Elmwood Farms is an environment where you feel like you can come, because we all have something to learn from one another, but you have something to offer. God has given you something that you're passionate about, and I guarantee we can find a use for it at Elmwood Farms, because we volunteer our time, we are donor supported. That gives us a chance to move at the pace that lets us slow down enough for wonder and observation. And to steal a phrase from Wendell Berry, it all turns on affection. The Berry Center, which is an organization, agricultural and cultural organization started by Wendell Berry's daughter, they have as their mission statement, they want to create equitable and ecological farming based on affection, out of love for creatures, for people, place, and for the planet. We're all about that at Elmwood Farms. And so, being donor supported, like I said earlier, we don't have the economy of scale. Like, our focus is not to make money. Our focus is to draw people in and get people to slow down and get people to plant a carrot seed and watch it grow and pull it out of the ground and be moved to tears at the goodness of God, that a seed must go into the ground and die before it can be raised up to life. There's a reason that Jesus uses agricultural metaphors left, right, and center. There's something so beautiful and experiential and meditative about the patience that moving at nature's speed. Gardening slows you down. You can't take nature, ball it up, and shove it into the round hole. All that to say, come support us. Maybe I'll say, like All Saints would say, come and see. First of all, just come and see. When we moved from our first to our second, when we moved from Elmwood Farm 1.0 to 2.0, there was a period where we were uncertain if we would continue at all. And like Andrew said, we went real hard on the first farm and maybe tired ourselves out a little bit too much. We learned some things. We saw this 1 acre plot, 8 times the size of the previous thing. We were like, can we do it? Is it going to be a strain on our families? We got to think about everything. We want to be good husbands. We're about husbandry at the farm, taking care of everything that's under our sphere of control. Is this good for us? And then we walked out into the space and we're like, well, we have to do it. This is beautiful. We'll make it work. God will make a way. So come and see, sign up on the email list. If you feel so led, support us. There's a donor page on the website. Come volunteer, join a team if you want, or just come out for an event. Anyway, we'd love to have you.
Eric, yesterday you and I were texting about Wendell Berry. The irony was not lost on us that we were corresponding via text about Wendell Berry. I'm going to ask all of us, we'll each give an answer to this as a closing question. If someone was going to read one thing by Wendell Berry, Eric, we'll start with you. What should it be?
Immediately, I thought of his Sabbath poems.
Good answer.
Yeah. I think there's something about poetry that pulls you in and closer and makes you slow down and think, and especially Wendell Berry's poetry, meditating on the supernatural within the natural and the play between the two and the tension of life and death and love. And I think I have been moved more recently to consider poetry. I'm a novel guy, but I've slowed down with his Sabbath poems, which is all about rest, of course. So
yeah. And that's what we were texting about was a Berry poem yesterday. Andrew, how would you what would you point people to?
I'm tempted to say my first step into things, which was The Unsettling of America, which is, if you're going to read like a book, I think that's a really good starting place. But I would almost maybe caveat that and say, start with the poetry, and then if you really like that, you could go there. But for me, the Piece of Wild Things, that collection of poems, which I think has maybe some crossover with the Sabbath poems. There's actually a poem, the poem Piece of Wild Things is actually a really, really good place to start, just because it's so beautiful. If it's like a first step, like a very first step. But don't let that be the last. The idea is that
be careful though. If you read Unsettling of America, you'll probably want to start a farm, because that's what happens.
Yeah. You might become a crazy person like me. So.
I'll say, since y'all have not given a novel, then this probably isn't a good first place because it really doesn't orient you well. But The Memory of Old Jack, just as a priest thinking about the point of life and the futility of life, the futility of a life lived, thinking about the present, lots of different reasons, but The Memory of Old Jack is at least, it's maybe not my favorite. It's actually not that enjoyable to read, I didn't find, but the most the one that stays with me to this day. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Eric, for doing this, but also just for what you do at Elmwood and the ministry y'all have at All Saints. If you've been watching this, feel free to reach out to me, and I can give you point you in the right direction with Elmwood. Go in peace.